Welcome to a very special crossover edition of She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting.
And the Unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast. We're your hosts, Alicia Katz Pollock,
Nancy McClelland,
and Questian Telka.
And every episode, we're digging into the real experiences, challenges, and unspoken truths of life in this profession.
Because if you've ever felt like you're the only one, you're not. And you shouldn't have to figure it out alone.
We want to thank our sponsors, Bill, Relay, and Carbon.
We are so grateful to them for helping us to bring these conversations to life, enabling us to share out loud what everyone's thinking, but no one is saying. Learn more about them on both shows' sponsor pages at shecounts.show and uqb.show.
Remember, you can go to earmark.app to earn CPE credit for both of these shows.
Since not all of our listeners know who you are and not all of yours know us, let's just take a minute to introduce ourselves. Nancy, would you like to go first?
Well, sure. Thank you, Questian. Hi, my name is Nancy McClelland. I am a CPA, and I'm better known as the Dancing Accountant. I have run a hyper-local accounting firm in my little neighborhood of Logan Square in Chicago for 25 years this year. I cannot believe it. And I also have a column in MSN. I run the community Ask a CPA for bookkeepers who want to learn how to collaborate better with tax pros and learn how to prepare tax-ready books. And of course, I am the co-host, along with Questian, of the She Counts podcast, Real Talk for Women in Accounting. Alicia?
So I am the founder and trainer at Royalwise.com, and we are a QuickBooks training library, a bookkeeping training library, and also Apple technology as well. So at Royalwise, we have classes and a community, and we do really good deep dives into QuickBooks training. And it's for bookkeepers. It's also for your clients as well. I'm the host of the Unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast, obviously. Here we are. I'm also a published author. I also publish textbooks for QuickBooks with Questiva Consultants. And I have, if you go onto Amazon, I have a vast library of self-published training materials as well.
Which I can personally vouch for.
Thank you. Thank you. And Questian, tell us about you.
My name is Questian Telka. I am the founder of Reconcile Financials. We are a fractional CFO firm focused on nonprofit accounting. I also love to speak and teach other accountants and spend time at conferences doing that, and as do Alicia and Nancy.
We are definitely conference buddies.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I am a co-host with Nancy, as she mentioned, of the She Counts podcast. And we're all really excited to get to do a crossover episode together as female podcasters. So this is really exciting.
It really is. Today's episode is called Why Brilliant Bookkeepers Undervalue Themselves. And I would say, given that we have 3 brilliant bookkeepers right here, all of whom have undervalued ourselves at one time or another, this is totally the right place for it.
It really is. And as our listeners know, and Alicia's don't, but they're about to find out, we love launching each episode with a story. And Alicia, I know you have one to share with us. Can you tell all of our listeners what the inspiration was for this topic today and the title of this episode? It's still pretty fresh, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just in the beginnings of this new phase and this new opportunity. And before I even tell the story, I just want to say that I really appreciate your perspective, because when I was telling the story, I thought I was telling a different story. And then what you took away from it was the topic of this episode about undervaluing yourselves. And I thought to myself, like, oh my God, I'm undervaluing myself. It wasn't part of my narrative, and I wasn't thinking about it that way at all. And which is actually the second time that you've brought things to my attention, that I was listening to your episode about burnout last year, and I was like, oh my God, I'm burnout. And this is like a year ago now.
And you and I have had some really good conversations, partially because of the podcast and partially because of my presentations at bridging the gap on vulnerability and how that can be a strength. And you've reached out to me about that too. So I am expecting a therapist fee any day now. Come on, Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, it is really true, because listening to you guys and being friends with you at conferences has absolutely opened up for me a different way, a different perspective, that, I think of myself as the invulnerable superhero, and you're like, Alicia, it's okay to struggle sometimes, and it's okay to talk about the fact that you're struggling. So that's so that's kind of what.
And I guess that's kind of what this whole podcast is about, right? For your listeners who aren't familiar with us, like Questian was saying earlier, you do not have to do it alone. You are not the only one struggling. When you look out there on social media, or when you look out there and you're like, oh my God, all of those other people, they're doing better than I am. They have their act together more than I do. I am the only one who is struggling with this, that, and the other. You can look at the QuickBooks queen herself right here, struggling with undervaluing herself, right? And to me, that says, oh gosh, wait a minute, I'm not alone, and I don't have to figure this out alone. I have resources, I can make friends, I can reach out, I can be honest about my experiences, because that's going to help everyone. That's actually going to develop a sort of community-wide sense of resilience in our industry.
Yeah, I have to say that when we saw each other at Scaling New Heights last year, and back to what you were saying about hearing the episodes and then having something resonate. And I remember the moment that you were like, oh, I heard, this episode about burnout, and you're like, and it was Lynette Osconnell that we had on as a guest, who is an expert on burnout. And I was like, I can't believe that we did something that resonated with Alicia. And I was just like,
right? Because I know Alicia from the big stage. I learned QuickBooks from Alicia and Hector. That they were my teachers for my entire, and I was, you want to know how I discovered the mobile app for QuickBooks? It was you. It was an in-person conference. Probably a SleaderCon. I don't know. It was a while ago, it was back in the day. But you were, and I remember when I joined the Theater of Public Speaking program, I was having a meeting with Misty as I first decided to sign up. And she asked who the people were in the profession who I considered inspirations and who I wanted to, emulate. And you were one of the first people I mentioned. And she made this look, she already knew you had signed up for the same cohort, but I did not know you were going to be in my cohort, and we were going to be studying together as peers. And she made a little smile and clap. And I'm like, why is she smiling and clapping? Because I mentioned Alicia. And then I found out she decided to keep it a surprise. And I found out we were going to be
that's
studying together in the same cohort. So isn't that amazing how each of us look up to each other in these different ways? And yet we all struggle. We all undervalue. So to go back to your story.
Yeah.
Please tell
us.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to start the episode.
We knew this was going to happen.
So here's what happened. So at Royalwise, I teach classes, but I also have a membership community where all the members get automatic free enrollment into all of the classes. So everybody just shows up. And I also have a coaching program where that's the top tier, where you get an hour with me every single month. And so it's third Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. And so that we're going to meet and we talk about whether it's accounting therapy for your spirit, or we actually dive in and do hands-on works in your own books or clients' books. Anyway, so I have bookkeeping clients mostly because what Alicia does is setups, training, and troubleshooting. And people come to me when their reports are just gibberish, and I whack everything into place and I set up their book so it actually works for their company and the reports are right. And then I teach them how to do it. And with a lot of my clients are micro businesses, like small mom and pop shops, solopreneurs, therapists, couple retail stores and e-commerce, but mostly individuals and micro businesses who the kind that are like, oh, I don't need a bookkeeper, or oh, I can't afford a bookkeeper. And some of them, all they really need is just monthly reconciling, but that's not how they should be spending their time. So I occasionally take on my clients and I say, well, hey, instead of meeting with me once a year, twice a year, quarterly, what if I just do your bookkeeping reviews for you? And so I had, probably at that point, maybe 30 clients that I was looking to do regularly. And one of my coaching people, I'll call her Brenda. Hi, Brenda.
Because that's her name.
Because that's her name. Brenda in our sessions always had really good questions. Like I could tell that she was thinking about the material, and even if she didn't know what to do, she knew there was something that needed to be done.
Oh, I
And
love that kind of brain. It is such a beautiful thing when you meet somebody like that, where they're like, this can't be right. I know there has to be more. I just don't know what the thing is. Help me find the
exactly,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. So that curiosity has actually become one of the two things that I look for in a new hire, but that's a separate tangent. So we'll go into that. So I was like, well, what if I brought on a bookkeeper and I actually became a mini bookkeeping firm, and Brenda would do the work and I would review Brenda. And so I was like, okay, let's try this. And so she came on and she started doing the bookkeeping for me. And about, for 2 years of doing this, and she was getting really, she was doing a great job, and our model that we had developed together organically really worked well. And then she started taking on her own clients, and a $500 client here, or I had a couple clients that were personal books, not bookkeeping, that I didn't really feel like they fit my model. And she's like, well, can I buy them from you? So she started buying some of my book of business clients, and then she started taking on her own clients and taking on $400 a month clients and $1,000 a month clients. And then one of the churches that she was working for took her on for $4,000 a month, not just as bookkeeping, but as administration. And all of a sudden she found herself making $10,000 a month. And she's like, hey, Alicia, I need to give you notice. I can't do your tiny little clients anymore.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah,
I feel we just did an episode recently on radical acceptance, and I'm having that right now. We're like two completely opposing feelings at the same time, which is like, on the one hand, a huge freaking success story, right?
yeah.
Like,
So proud
talk
of her.
about being able to teach her all of this stuff and amazing. And on the other hand, you're like, oh my God,
I don't
I
want to
taught
lose
her
you.
everything she knows, and now she's leaving. This
Right.
sucks.
Right.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, so a huge success story, but then it left me with like, well, what am I going to do now? That am I going to take these back and do them myself? Am I going to sell off my book of business? Do I, and drop the bookkeeping part altogether? And then I went,
Right. And here Brenda is, she's making $10,000 a month.
right, right.
And you're like,
And so
what
I was
about
like,
me?
okay, well, what am I going to do here? And so, and like clearly I underprice these clients, but also, like I said, like it's either pay a pittance or they aren't going to do bookkeeping at all.
So we've all had to deal with scenarios like this. It's very emotional running businesses. I know Nancy's had to deal with it. I've had to manage it myself, whether you're at a big firm or a small firm. And when we're hiring, we want to pay special attention to who we're hiring, and we want the kind of people that are driven to learn and to grow. But
Totally. Yeah.
and we're supportive of that, right? And that's so important.
Yeah, Hector actually was the one when I lost my first employee. I was frustrated because I had taught them everything they knew, like literally everything they knew about this, and then they like went off and started their own firm, and it was hard for me because she didn't tell me that's what she was doing. So like I would have been proud of her.
that.
You remember that?
Yes,
Yeah. That was when you and I started working together.
Yeah.
Questian. Yeah. I was not really sure what I was going to do, and I was so upset, and I like taught her everything she knew, and on the one hand I was really proud. And I was talking to Hector Garcia about it, and he said, what's that great quote? Like it's hard because, you teach them everything they know and then they leave. And he said, yeah, but what if you don't teach them everything they need to know and they stay?
Yeah, that's worse.
Right?
Yeah.
To go to your point, Question, like you want to hire people who have curiosity. You want to hire people who may, like you were saying.
Yeah. I think what happens is when that takes place, it forces us to take a look at and realize the value of what we've built. Right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you end up feeling trapped, right? Like you're just always going to hire people. This is a little fresher for me than I realized it would be when we planned the episode because
That's right.
Yeah, my longtime employee, one of my longtime employees, she's been with me for over 8 years, and she just gave notice 2 days ago. I mean, she's gonna stay with me for like months, transitioning out. We have a good relationship, but she's a stay-at-home mom, and this is just too stressful for her. But I'm having those same feelings right now, and I feel left behind. I feel trapped. I feel, yeah, it's just like but I love what you're saying about that unexpected mirror. Like it causes you to realize the value of what you've built over and over and over again. Is that what it triggered in you? How did you react to any of this?
So the first reaction was, well, do I stop? What am I going to do? And then I was like, well, if it worked for Brenda, can I repeat the success? And if it works for one person, can I scale it?
Well, and you are learning, this is what's amazing too. It's like, symbiotic, right? Like you taught her so much and then in return, like you've learned something from her process and you're going, can I take something away from that and also
Oh, that's right. Because
yeah.
not only have you brought her up over these past 2 years and taught her everything that she knows, but like now you have an opportunity to learn from her and from her experience.
Right. And it wasn't just the bookkeeping part. It was, how do we communicate over Slack? We implemented Double, like the technology component as well. And so I didn't want to just stop, because if I'm teaching bookkeeping, I gotta have a bookkeeping firm. And so that was part of what gives me the authenticity to do this in the first place. And so I definitely needed to move forward. So I got what I considered a harebrained idea of, like, what if I do this again and scale it? And so I went to my next members meeting and said, hey, you guys, I have this idea. Is this a good idea or is this a stupid idea? And I kind of laid it out, like what Brenda's story. And Brenda was actually there, so she got to tell her own story.
Wait, so you actually told like the members of your, so you're not talking about team members in your business. You're talking about the people who are actually in your coaching.
In the Royalwise Owls program.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I love that you took that question to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was like I needed to see if this was a good idea or not. Like, like on the surface, the cynical skeptic would say, oh, people are paying her to do the bookkeeping. And I'm like, but that's not the story at all. But that was like the little voice in the back of my head.
Oh.
And then I realized that what it really was a training opportunity, that if there are so many bookkeepers, as we're talking about in this episode, undervalue their skills and underestimate themselves. And so many of my members are really good bookkeepers that they don't have the confidence, or they don't know enough about the QuickBooks piece of it. Or I have a lot of people who are just utter beginners. I also have business owners who are doing the bookkeeping in their own business, for their own business as employees.
Why do you think this happens? Why do you think that many technically excellent bookkeepers undervalue themselves?
I mean, this is why do you have a podcast? There's a whole just wired. Human beings are wired for insecurity. So I'm just going to leave the conversation there on that.
Oh my gosh. I hope that we end up using that as a clip for promoting this episode, because that is so true. Like, yeah, you're right. It is it is one of the most human things, right? Like this concept, like if you're a helper, if you're an implementer, like, yeah, you are the QuickBooks queen. You know how to QuickBooks inside and out. Like in Ask a CPA, and Alicia is a member of Ask a CPA, which I love, but she also comes and teaches at Ask a CPA when we've got like QuickBooks deep dives, because like she knows all the things about QuickBooks. But you probably are looking at yourself being like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. That'll only take me 10 minutes. Right? Like,
Right.
you
And
know,
but the knowledge it's not about like, hey, look at me, I can do this in 10 minutes. It's, hey, here's all this expertise that you need in your practice to speed up your efficiency and your skills and your
yeah.
confidence. So I realized that it was not just the QuickBooks skills that I bring to the table. It's also the practice management and using Double and the technology and the client relationships and all of that. And so I checked in with the team, with the group, and I said, "Well, is this something that you would be interested in doing? Would any of you be interested in doing this kind of incubator?" And they jumped on it. And like people are like, "Oh my God, Alicia, that's a great idea. I would love to study under you. I would love hands-on experience in real bookkeeping scenarios because every single one is different. None of us have two clients that are exactly the
Right.
same. And everybody's got
Yeah.
their own issues. And even, you've got that couple clients that even when things should be going smooth, there's always something.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how do you deal with that? And so the response I got was enthusiastic. So then I put together a survey, and I said, well, like, how much time would you expect? How many clients would you expect? How much would you be willing to pay to be part of this program? And I started framing it in my head as a new tier of service, like that upper level tier that's like 5 times the value of the other things that you're doing. And, I put a price range on it from like $5,000 a month to $25,000 a month, and to see where people would be willing to pay. And some weren't willing to pay much, and some were like, whatever the price, it's going to be worth it. Whatever
Yeah,
you
because it's invaluable. Because like
Right.
because that bridges that gap between your, you've learned all of this. You have this book learning, we'll call it, right? But like
Mhm.
now you get a sandbox, real life, real clients, real communication, real curveballs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of the idea or the model that I'm putting together is that I'm going to start by I'm gonna be doing their bookkeeping, and they're going to watch me. So there's gonna be the modeling, and then the next month, they're gonna be doing the bookkeeping while I talk them through, and we'll do that for as many months as it takes for each person or which client. Some of them obviously are easier than others, and then after, 5 or 6 months, they should be working independently, and then all I have to do is the reviews, and so that's kind of the model of it,
I love
and
this because it's like so we talk a lot about value pricing in our industry, which is something I still haven't embraced fully. But the one concept of it that I
Nancy's
completely
like,
agree with.
sorry. I just
Question,
she's like,
you should laugh at me.
haven't embraced at all.
At all, which I haven't embraced at all. Yes, this is true. You're right. Thank you for calling me out on that. This is why we're such good friends. You tell it like it is. All right, so I haven't embraced value pricing at all. I've got some problems with it. We'll have a whole episode about that some other time. However, there is one concept in value pricing that I feel is so accurate, which is when everything depends on you, right? And your hands and your knowledge, and that's what you are billing for. That's what you're charging for. Your time fills up and there's a cap, right?
That's right.
But when your expertise can be multiplied through others, your impact expands, right? So it's not just like a greedy, I want more money, which is how I had thought of value pricing for so many years. It's just, I want more money and I want to figure out a way to bilk my clients and to get everything I can get. And I don't want to leave anything on the table. When in fact, it's not just that you can charge for more time than you're actually spending on something because you only have 365 days a year and so many hours in a day, you're actually making a bigger impact. You're actually bringing more value to the world and finding that overlap of like, what are you really, really gifted at? And what does the world need?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And so circling back around to like how I added that back into my structure is I also
Yeah.
realized that essentially this is a paid internship, that sure, they're participating in a training program, but they need to be paid for the work that they're doing. And so I thought
Which is
about,
kind
well,
of what was happening with Brenda. Like that
right,
was
right.
organically the structure of it.
Right, and with Brenda, I was paying her hourly for the time it was taking, but I realized for this model that it was not going to work. So what I decided to do is like, okay, well, in a normal firm, the staff working on the books get a percentage of the client engagement. And so I wanted them to have most of the money from the client engagement because they're going to be doing most of the work. So I looked at my expenses and how I was going to be able to make it work. And I was like, okay, 60% feels good to me. So the arrangement is that they are paid interns. And my lawyer said, oh, by the way, they can't be contractors. They have to be employees. So when I put this in place, I was not expecting to hire 5 employees, but now I am hiring 5 employees, and they're salaried flat rate based on 60%. I'm going to be totally transparent about all this. 60% of the client fees that they're getting, and so they're paid employees. So I just doubled my company size from 5
Yeah.
to 10 with 5 part-time paid salaried monthly employees that are
Now
going to
you
get.
know what my life feels like, Alicia. It's hard. I mean, and I'm going to throw in and ask a CPA thing here, which was you had asked. That was a question that you posted. Was, hey, I'm registering for in all of these different states, and
Yeah.
I got to register for unemployment, and how does this work? And they're asking me these questions, and what are they really saying, and all of that. And the reason that I know those things is not just from getting my master's and my CPA, but like I've had to do that, and I've found states where I'm like, I am never hiring an employee in that state again because it's so awful. So like there's something that you need to keep in mind as you're doing this. Make sure you find out what state somebody is from before you hire them. Come to Ask a CPA and ask first.
Yeah, that's a couple of my states. Not only did I have to register for unemployment, but there was another employment tax, so some of them were like twice as much. But
Yeah.
for me, that's exciting because I'm learning something new that I did not know about the industry.
Yeah.
So I'm getting additional training and exposure to the bigger picture myself. So it's a
It's
learning
like you're
learning
reframing
experience.
for opportunity and new learning at every possible turn
Yeah.
here. I mean, like this is you reassessing your own value and reframing things and doing something really scary is actually like even if financially it weren't to pay off, which it sounds like it absolutely will because this is really smart pricing. Um like this has an inherent intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I built it not just with the bookkeeping component. I was like, okay, if I'm going to train them as an incubator to that they can have their own bookkeeping practice at the end of this, they also need some things that I don't provide, like how do you run a bookkeeping firm? I
Right.
can teach them
Right.
like our model, but not the accounting life cycle and things like that. So I'm talking to Mariette Martinez, for example, about doing her accounting life cycle course and enrolling all of these interns into that program. And so,
Another theater
yeah,
public speaking
yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, but then they're also going to need some of the emotional support and the sounding board things. I'm like, well, I'm part of Richard Ropa's Roundtable. What if we had a little mini roundtable for them that I was not a part of, so that if they had problems with me or the way the incubator was going, they had a safe space to talk about that kind of personal growth, or to be able to manage what's happening with me, because Richard's actually my business coach as well.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, let's actually build in additional trainings to this. And I also every summer run a hands-on training. We call it the hot course, where I'm running the textbook that I teach. That's literally click by click and step by step building companies from scratch. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's not just the servicing the clients. I want them to take my hands-on training class. I want them to have a sounding board roundtable where they can either get personal accounting therapy or a grievance panel if it's needed, but how much of that?
Yes.
And then also the bookkeeping training part that is not my level of expertise. So I kind of parsed out like, okay, if they're going to do all of these things, like if they were to pay for each of these a la carte, how much would it cost to take Mariette's class? How much would it cost to take my hands-on class? How much would it cost to be part of Roundtable? And how much does it cost for my time as a consultant?
Yeah.
And I kind of did the calculations and came up with a dollar amount, which came to roughly, it was like $19,000. I'm like, who the heck is going to pay $19,000 to be part of this? And
Per year or per month, or like
year,
19,000 per year?
per
Okay.
year. And then, and so, but again, I asked and they're like, yeah, we will. In fact, we want to, and we're excited about this. So I
Yeah.
did some things with the pricing also, like since they're already my members, and this is essentially a new membership tier, they're getting prorated discounts for what they already are paying
Okay.
to participate. So
let me get this straight. So they're going to pay you $19,000 a year
Mhm.
for all of this, including what you're getting from Richard and Mariette and Royalwise. But then you will be paying them 60% of the actual client fees of the clients that they're working on.
Yes.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And by the way, before I forget, I want to mention, let's make sure that we give them the free annual bookkeeping review PDF from Ask a CPA. I want to
Sure.
give that to them for free. And maybe we can even give them an Ask a CPA discount. That would be
great.
That would be
awesome.
great. Yeah. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a discount code for these people in your coaching group who are doing this, but I'm actually going to put the link to the Ask a CPA annual Bookkeepers Guide to Annual Reviews in the show notes. And then anybody who listens to this can at least get the free download on that.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for the inspiration, Alicia. I appreciate
it. Absolutely. And then I was like, okay, well, what if I got some sponsors for this? And I approached Double because we're using Double in the practice. And so they were willing to kick in a small sponsorship. And, my team was like, oh, well, you're going to need that for operations. And I'm like, no, I'm going to use it as a scholarship for these folks. And so
that's so cool.
I broke the dollar amount down and gave everybody a small scholarship to reduce the costs, even further. And then I gave them tiers. You can pay it all up. You can pay monthly. You can pay quarterly and get a 5% discount, or you can pay one lump sum annually and get a 10% discount. And I got responses across the board. And
I
so
love
That is
that.
amazing.
I love that you offered scholarships. What I also heard you say earlier was that you created a space for grievances, which most people, I just find that very insightful. And, you know, so it's really important to have that as an option for them as well. So anyway, I just wanted to comment and say that I think that that's amazing. And I have a question. So when you first got to the point where you were naming or coming up with a dollar amount because of, your client levels and this idea of undervaluing, how did it make you feel at that number? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but
I mean, I was distinctly uncomfortable with asking anybody for that.
How come though? Because I mean, I'm the same way. But like I even for myself, it's hard to identify. Is that because like you're worried that you're going to be perceived as greedy, or like what made you uncomfortable? What about it?
A couple things. Part of it's just poverty consciousness. Everybody wants to spend a minimum amount of money, right? Part of it is I don't want to price anybody out of the opportunity. That there is an element here of you have to have resources in order to participate, and at this point there's nothing that I can do about that. It is costing me money to do this. I have to be compensated for it. So
I know. I mean, you're not. Somebody said to me once, very recently, that I run my business like a nonprofit. And I
Right.
thought,
Oh gosh,
it's not
yeah.
entirely
Mark keeps
untrue.
telling me.
Right.
Mark keeps telling me, my husband says, I do so many trades with clients when they can't afford to pay me. And he joked for years that one day I was going to come home with like a live chicken or something like that. Well, guess what? One of my clients ended up raising chickens in her backyard and she gave us eggs.
My husband comes home with eggs. He barters his Apple training. He goes to this lady's house and he
Oh my
cleans out
gosh.
her junk mail, and we get eggs.
So, I mean, there's good and bad for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the point I was trying to make there was just that, you have to price it and value yourself appropriately. And I know Nancy and I are both guilty of, not always doing that. So,
Well,
yeah.
and it's weird because like on the one hand you say we're guilty of it, and yes. But is it all bad? Like it's not all bad because like Alicia's talking about how she doesn't want to price people out of this, right?
Mhm.
Because she knows it's an amazing opportunity. And so, Alicia, I feel like you're hitting all of the right things here because you're doing what Questian is saying, and you're not going to be guilty of undervaluing yourself. You're valuing yourself
Yeah.
properly.
Oh,
However, you're using the sponsorship to offer scholarships. So you
mhm.
are simultaneously addressing the thing that would have made you potentially feel super uncomfortable.
Right. I mean, honestly, I underestimated the amount of time it was going to take me for the setup component of this. So that's my learning experience with this is, when I started it and priced it was before I talked to my lawyer who said, oh, by the way, they're not contractors, they're employees.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, great. Now I got to do employer taxes and I have to register in all these states and do all this other stuff. And, but I welcome that challenge. That's no problem. But the I really framing it in my head of, okay, if the demonstrated outcome of working with me has already been somebody who is pulling in $10,000 a month, $19,000 a year is a valuable investment to be able to get to that place because I have every confidence that I'm going to be able to train these folks so that they can look at any set of books and either know what to do or know where to find the answers.
And then you're going to have all of these people who are like, oh my gosh, I participated in this amazing program. They're going to tell other people about it. And this will just keep going
Yeah.
and going and going.
I
So
mean, let me just respond to that. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
the exit strategy is up in the air. I'm very, very crystal clear with them that this is a pilot program, that
right.
we are building this together based on the expectation and how it actually pans out, that there's going to be some probable bumps in the road, but we're absolutely together going to work it out so it works for everybody. And we don't also know what the exit strategy is this program going to continue next year with a new group of people? Is it going to be just we're going to work this out and they're going to become my staff? Are they going to become next year's trainers? Is it going to stay a cohort of 5 or do we go to 10? Like the possibilities are out there, but until I
Wow.
actually put it through its paces and see how it works and see what works and what needs to be jiggered, I don't know what next year is going to hold. And
None of that even occurred to me, by the way. Like
yeah,
having that kind of imagination just doesn't even I don't have that. It's not like a part of my brain. I don't even know where I love that you have this entire group who's actually participating in the program that are helping you find your way and come up with ideas about how it could work.
yeah, it's co-creation. It really is, that they were just game. They know it's a good idea, and we're going to design this amazing program on
Yeah,
the fly.
that's why
Yeah.
the community and mentorship and collaboration is so important. What caused you to decide that rather than to shrink, to expand? Like where was that decision?
There's a couple different elements about it. I mean, one of the things is that my brain never stops. I always want new and bigger and better and hey, can we do this? And can we do this? And can we do this? There's the part of me that wants to grow the company. There's the part of me who wants to learn even more about what's happening in the industry. And honestly, I've got 10 to 15 years before retirement, and I want to be able to sell my company. And in order to do that, I have to have something worth selling.
Yeah.
And so, it's one thing to have a book of business of 30 clients, and it's another thing to have 500 people that I support all the way through the year that are just appointment-based appointments, but that's not gonna show up on a balance sheet in order for somebody to buy Royalwise. And so I was like, "Okay, well, what are some of these other strategies?" Because in the long term, and, I'm just being completely transparent here,
Yeah.
that, right now, Royalwise is based on me and Jamie, my husband, Jamie, who's our Apple trainer.
Yeah.
We are the trainers. Right now, we are the product. And at least as far as the public exposure goes and the training curriculum. But then, there's just the practices that both he and I, our daily is helping people directly with their technology. But that's not something that you can sell. That's
Yeah.
me helping clean up somebody's books, and that's him dialing in somebody's new computer or teaching them how not to get scammed through email. That's
Yeah.
not something that we can sell.
So you want to create
Yeah.
something that you can sell, or that creates some sort of passive income so that you don't have to constantly be touching it, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that's always
the company can't center on me and Jamie forever, and
Yeah.
so figuring out how to grow Royalwise in a way that is bigger than both of us.
Well, that's actually a great that is a great segue into the concept that um, we discussed, like when we were first thinking about this story. And Questian and I were just like, oh my gosh, this could be such a useful topic for the She Counts listeners. Technical mastery of something doesn't prepare us for stepping into authority
Absolutely.
and leadership, right? Like the skills that accounting professionals develop naturally from the work that we do versus skills that like nobody teaches us. That's, owning authority and communicating the value of your work and
running a
we talked about
business.
pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Running a business versus working in it, which has been always been a struggle for me, which the scaling
Absolutely.
factor,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and allowing others to grow beyond you, like with Brenda. And like these are concepts that like it's not normal for us to develop these. Somebody has to teach them to us. Or I mean, like I know you and I have both had really great experiences at REFRAME.
mhm,
And that's sort of a Hector Garcia's conference, which teaches us to position as
mhm.
an expert and teaches us about pricing and teaches us about communicating our value.
Right.
Um, like, do you feel like this is that turning point for you when you're shifting from this difference between like knowing the material and owning your authority?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's analogous on the surface to the whole thing. Like, people think that because they know how to use QuickBooks, they know how to do bookkeeping, right? And they're
Oh,
not it's not the same.
not the same.
And I'm the first person to say that because my company is built on using the software. But even if you're an expert in the software, there's still this other piece, and Roywise has never touched on that part of it.
Which is one of the reasons that you're a member of and such a huge supporter of Ask a CPA
Yeah,
and and Roundtable and Mariette's business. Like you see those other pieces of the puzzle out there.
exactly. And why I'm bringing those pieces of the puzzle in with me too,
Yeah.
because you can't do it all alone. But then the fact that you just brought up Reframe, that was also a big piece of this. That I was really struck by Blair Enns' book. He gave away copies of it, and I've been reading it. And he's got this expert's mantra, and I've actually got the book right here. That
Oh, so
um,
for people who are watching, hold that up for just a second.
Yeah.
I
okay,
want to see that.
here we
Okay.
go.
All
So here's
right.
Blair Enns' book.
The 4 conversations. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so in Blair Enns' book, The Four Conversations, he's got this expert's mantra: I am the expert. I am the prize. I am on a mission to help. I can only do that if you let me lead. I accept that not all will follow. and that's your focus, your purpose, your leadership, and your detachment. And I was like, and that's when I kind of shifted in my thinking a little bit. And it's like, okay, my value is not me being able to untangle complicated books. That's what I do, and it has value, but that's not my value. I have this unique value proposition of the total package. I have a master's in teaching, but I'm not teaching 7th grade English. I'm I'm teaching I don't I'm teaching people who want to be there and are hungry for knowledge, and that I have this authority and I have this expertise and I have this experience and I have this confidence and I have this stack of resources, all the people that I've worked with at Intuit, that if something's wrong in the software, I don't always call support. I go ping the PM who's responsible for that
It's because
feature.
you're the queen of QuickBooks. I mean,
That's right.
of course you do. Because look who I am.
Yeah, and I'm a conversation like this that we're having right now, like vulnerability is not in my skill set. And the fact that we're like talking this deep about the program is uncomfortable to me.
Hmm.
And, part of me is like, well, wait, am I like pulling the curtain back aside too far?
No.
Which speaks to the role. We talk about this on She Counts all the time. It speaks to the role that community and mentorship can play in helping each other find and speak their value. I mean, if it weren't for Questian, oh my gosh, like I would still be doing probably every single webinar I've ever taught for free. She's the one who, it's because I would feel so uncomfortable asking because I didn't want anybody to think I was too big for my britches, right? Like this role of community and mentorship, and that is part of what allows us to be vulnerable. And all of what you're talking about, I mean, this is a risk.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
failure is
And
really personal, and it's a super hard thing to be like, I'm just gonna tell the world about it. I'm gonna tell all of my podcast listeners and all of the She Counts podcast listeners that this is what I'm
right.
doing.
Yeah. And
you know,
it is a risk. And, I'm not ready to share about it yet, but I'm going through a business shift and change myself too. And it's like, it is terrifying when you are
Yeah.
doing that. And I can't wait till I am to the point where I'm ready to share what it is, but it's not completely finished. So, but yeah, it's a huge risk because I'm trying to own my authority, which I know is there, which is what we're talking about. But it's also kind of terrifying when you're making such a dramatic change.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have to do
Uh,
it anyway.
Yeah.
And
Do it anyway.
here we are talking about it when, like, I'm in the infancy of this idea. I just got the idea 2 months ago, asked my folks 6 weeks ago, got the yeses, and have been actively putting it in place for the next month. And one of the
It's
things that's
amazing.
really important to me is the intellectual capital inside the US, that our industry right now is doing a lot of outsourcing,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot of there's and with between that and AI, there's a decreasing opportunity for US-based bookkeepers. But oh my
It's so
God, we
true.
need to keep it in-house. We need to have
I say this all the time
educated,
because,
smart,
like,
talented people here in our own
here,
Mhm.
well, and I mentioned, because your listeners may not know who I am and haven't heard the She Counts podcast before. My business, my CPA firm, is hyper local. It's not just Chicago, like it's Logan Square and the 3 surrounding neighborhoods. And so we're always like, shop small, stay local, because it, like, keeps dollars in our communities with small businesses. And so, like, you're kind of doing that with this training program. You're offering that opportunity that otherwise doesn't really exist unless you
Right.
have an internship or something
Right.
like that.
And
Yeah.
and then there's also the component, can I help them get jobs after that? Like, that's also
Yeah.
this inquiry, and I'm a member of the BDO Alliance, and, maybe I can use this as a feeder program.
Oh,
So
cool.
just we're still just like throwing out ideas to see what sticks, and I just want to do right by these people. That's what's most important to me, is that that the 5 people who have trusted me to start this process and pilot the program with me, that I'm grateful
I
that
love that you're
it's not just a
specifically
crazy idea.
calling them out as people you're grateful to, because I mean, when I started Ask a CPA, oh my gosh, it was because of a few people in bookkeeping butts who were like,
Yeah.
I just want to pay you to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Well,
I'm like,
you were always so helpful. And then I remember
"Aw."
you came to me and you said, I'm thinking about starting this community. And I was like, do it. Do it.
Yeah, I
I was
mean,
like, you should, because there's nobody, it's so intimidating as a bookkeeper. When you're not, so it's like you teach about this, like the tax ready bookkeeper, right? And this relationship between bookkeepers and a lot of CPAs. And it's so important for bookkeepers to have somebody that they trust, that they feel comfortable with going to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of value there.
And yet, you were like, do it, do it, do it. And what did I say back to you? I was like, who would want to pay in a group to ask me questions as if I'm some
like,
expert? And you were like,
you are an expert, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're my expert, Nancy. If I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to ask you.
and I'm yours.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm yours and you're mine. And yeah, it's just, I mean, there's a broader lesson for listeners here, right? Like, well, probably a bunch of them. There's recognizing the value you create, even when it feels like ordinary for you.
We talked a lot about vulnerability and being vulnerable and stepping into leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And
Go
ahead.
And the ability to expand really, it happens when you step into your own worth.
Totally. Oh my God. I am so like on fire right now. I'm so excited for you, Alicia. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I am so excited to hear what happens next. And I'm so excited to celebrate with you. And I'm so excited to hear how this morphs. But you want to know what I'm most excited about? What Questian said, you're doing it anyway. Like, oh, you know what? Questian, the QuickBooks, unofficial QuickBooks accountants podcast, they probably don't know about Do It Anyway. Do you mind sharing quickly about our concept there?
Yeah. Nancy and I have an entire episode on facing your fears. Like, so accepting the fact that doing something different is terrifying, and to embrace it and do it anyway. Alicia's going through this shift right now. I'm sure it's terrifying and scary, and I'm going through a huge change and shift as well. Nancy, you were scared when you started Ask a CPA, and so that episode is us talking about all about kind of leaning in to that fear and doing it anyway.
Absolutely. Because it makes me so crazy when people are like, don't be afraid. I'm like, no, be afraid. It's like the most human thing possible. Don't tell somebody not to be afraid. Like, we can't help it. We, of course, are afraid. It's like, it's in
Human
our DNA.
nature. Yeah.
Yeah. Our brains are trying to protect us. Like, oh gosh, you could get eaten by a tiger.
Well, the fear, what I've been telling myself, which is in the episode, what I've been telling myself most recently over and over and over again is I'm on the right track because I am absolutely terrified.
Yeah, that's how you know.
That's how I know.
Oh my gosh, I always learn so much when we get together with our friends on this show. Alicia, thank you so much for suggesting a crossover episode in the first place.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
Yeah, it really, really was. I mean, we both listened to each other's podcasts, and the perspective that you bring to this incubator idea, like you're adding to the perspective, like things I didn't think about, or recognizing my own role in it. I'm always just like, okay, do this stuff, get the tasks done, get the lists, get the SOPs, make sure everybody's taken care of.
Those are all important too. I don't want anybody to think those aren't important.
But realizing that it's also personal growth for me is like, that's actually a revelation for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my God, that warms my heart. I'm so glad to hear you say that.
As we wrap up, we'd like to ask all of our listeners to follow our She Counts podcast LinkedIn page and to join in on this conversation by sharing under the episode why brilliant bookkeepers undervalue themselves. What is an example of when you've undervalued yourself and how did you move past it? What did you do to get around it?
And you can also have that conversation in the Unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast LinkedIn group. We have one also, since we are crossing this episode over. So I would love to hear that same thing as well. And well, before we sign off, we want to leave you with a quote from Oprah Winfrey. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for.
Oh, I love that. Thank you all so much for being here with us on She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting.
And on the Unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast, where we break down the latest QuickBooks news, features, and workflows for accounting professionals.
If something in today's episode hit home for you, well, that's exactly why we're doing it.
So you feel seen, heard, and never alone.
And remember, you can get CPE credit for listening. Go to earmark.app. Links to that, as well as how to learn more about our sponsors' solutions and lots of other resources we've mentioned. Those are all in the show notes.
And as always, we would ask you to please subscribe, leave us a review because it helps other people find both of the podcasts.
And huge thanks to you, Questian, and Nancy, and the She Counts podcast for this really fun collaboration. This is a great conversation, totally different than I would have ever generated myself. And so I'm really delighted. So I'm really glad that our combined audiences could take part in this today.
Us too. Thank you so much, Alicia. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks for us and in 1 for Alicia.
And on behalf of the Unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast, we will see you
in the next one.